Good morning. We'd like to say welcome to the Inclusive Impact Church. This is going to be one of many podcasts, and the podcast is concerning faith and trauma, and we named it God Within. So today we're going to start out with our good friend and part of the family, and E.L. Winston. So we're so grateful to have him come in and start this with us. So I'm a little nervous.
Well,
You a little nervous? I know we go way back.
We go way back.
So with no further ado, I'm going to let Winston introduce himself, and we'll take it from there.
All right. Hi, y'all. Good morning. I am E.L. Winston. We do go way back. I am a minister out of the Box Ministries in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, under the leadership of Martella and Lydia Preston. I'm also the co-founder of Transformation NC, which is a program geared towards creating safe spaces for trans-identified individuals, especially trans-identified individuals of color. I'm also the founder of two non-Greek organizations, one for masculine-centered lesbians and one for transgender men.
So we're so glad to have you here, Winston, with us. Funny story. When Winston was getting baptized, and we had to call out their names, Apostle Derek and Pastor Lydia and myself was doing baptism that day. And for some reason, I always called Winston Danny. So he got baptized as Danny.
That probably should have been
the new name. But there's so I don't know. There was always something about it reminded me of my cousin Danny, and I guess that's the reason that name stuck. And you always put me in the mind of him, so that you know you're Danny. Well, let's get started. What brought us on this journey was one day I was actually talking to God. You know how we have these conversations, and thinking about a young lady who used to go to Blessed Family of God Church, and that she just quit totally and just dedicated herself to the Lord. She did not identify as with the LGBTQ community anymore. And my question to God, um, after she everything, her relationship and everything, and started seeking a closer relationship to Him, was it enough? And uh, what was dropped in my spirit at that time, I was shaking my head like, well, is it enough, Lord? Is it enough? And the Holy Spirit reminded me of the scripture that this relationship is not earned. It is a gift given out of love. And so many people in the faith community would want to withhold a journey with God from the LGBTQ plus community. And started thinking about my experience with the faith community and what happened and the trauma that I went through. And I started thinking about other people, and I wanted to get some of their stories out so that people know that my sexuality does not define my spirituality, who I am in Christ. And so I just thought it fitting that we do a podcast with faith and trauma. And I'm so glad that you decided to join us and be our very first. Hey, look at that. And I have a couple of questions that I want to ask. And one of the questions was, describe your relationship with with faith or with religion when you were growing up.
When I was growing up, okay, so I grew up Baptist. I mean, I grew up Baptist. That should tell you a lot. So I grew up in a fire and brimstone, that kind of thing. So my relationship with the Lord grew in. I personally have not, and I just think that's because of my relationship with the Lord, have never experienced trauma in that way, right? So coming up and my thought process while growing in faith was, well, they say God is forgiving, so maybe at some point, I'll be forgiven, but I never felt ostracized or unworthy or any of those things, right? But as my relationship grew in the Lord, I just, because I always encourage people to develop that relationship on your own, right? Mm-hmm. And so that sparked my research for a better understanding for myself. So I went from, I hope that I'll be forgiven, to who I am and who I love is not a sin, right? And that is not something that I need forgiveness for, right? And so there's a lot of other things I do need forgiveness for, like gluttony, laziness, those type of deals, right? But who I am at the core of my person and who I choose to share my life with is not that. And so once I reached that point, then everything else just was, because I can listen to the message before affirming churches were established. I could go to a church that wasn't affirming and listen to the message and take out what was being said to me and leave what wasn't. In this day and age, my first thing is speaking to people that have those concerns is that if the church is supposed to be a place of healing for those of us who are sick, right? This is where you're supposed to get what you need, right, to continue on the journey. So why would I go somewhere that is not going to give me that? Now, I'm not saying that you should go to a place that agrees with everything, because I don't. Any place that I go, if you agree with everything I say, I'm in the wrong place, right?
Right.
So, you know,
Yeah.
you know, you just have to find a place that is affirming,
It's gonna feed your
that's
spirit.
gonna feed your spirit, right? And so, um, yeah, that's just how I feel about things. Like, as soon as affirming churches were a thing, I no longer went to spaces that were not affirming, right? Bible teaching, yes. Non-affirming, no.
I have friends or people that I grew up with that are still in the closet because they feel called to a certain place, or even because it belonged to their grandparents, and it it's it's like I don't know how that works in with a church, but it's like it's passed from one generation to the next, and they feel like they have to hide who they are, but yet still serve in the church,
Right.
and so which creates certain trauma of its own.
It's generational trauma.
Yes, and um, it's a shame that a person who is uniquely and wonderfully created by the Creator has to hide who God created them to be. And in saying that, we'll have people who would say, God didn't create you to be this way or to be that way, as far as being homosexual or LGBTQ plus, ever which one of those letters you identify with.
Right.
They say, well, God didn't call you to be that way. I remember being small. I probably wasn't even maybe 2. Who people remember being 2 years old? But I remember being 2, finding safety and comfort in the arms of a woman versus finding safety and comfort in my father's arms. Not that I didn't feel safe there. It was that I can't explain that feeling it felt so much better being in my mother's arms versus being in my father's arms. So I think about people who are told, you can't serve in the church and be who you are. They won't let them do certain things in the church. You can attend.
Right.
They say you can attend, but you can't serve and be a usher in the work committee or to work in the children's church or the children's ministry. They're limited in what they can do. And seeing it has, growing up, had anybody ever said anything to you as far as dealing with your faith wise or in a religious area that was made you feel rejected or unsafe?
No, not for me. Like I said, growing up, there's no time that I felt that way. Like I said, in my own personal thoughts and struggles as a child, I felt maybe like all my friends was going to heaven and I wasn't going because of what I was taught. But I was also encouraged to develop a relationship with the Lord myself. And so in developing that relationship, those things no longer held weight with me, which is why I tell people all the time that you should definitely create that for yourself. Like, I came up in a time where, you go to church, the pastor or the preacher teach you what the word says versus me finding out for myself what the word says. And I think when we talk about generational trauma, people often think about in families they think about financial status or the way in which you navigate the world, but it also plays into the way in which you navigate your faith, right?
Right.
Because how is it possible for you to tell someone that because of how you identify who you love, you cannot serve in church, right?
Right.
But what you're saying is who I am is not acceptable to the Lord, but lying is, because I'm gonna need to lie if I wanna
Right.
participate here, right? I'm gonna
Right.
need to not be who I am, and isn't that against everything that we are taught, right? And so, yeah, like, and even in that, I was never the preacher never said, hey, I was on a choir. I was the only at the time when I identified as female was the only female in the group of guys who were in training to be preachers, because I was like, so if they can do it, why can't I do it, right? So it's always been my thing to question those things that you say are not for me,
Right.
right? So
Yeah, because at that time, even they saying women serving in the ministry was not allowed.
exactly.
They didn't believe in women ministers, women pastors. Even today, we have some churches that don't believe in women serving, and I find that ironic and a little funny, kind of, because the first ministry that ever started come from Mary, which was the mother of Jesus. It was the ministry of her bringing him into this world. She was good enough to carry him, and that was an honor in itself, and bring him into this world. So I find it funny when you tell women that they can't serve the Lord.
Like I just find it funny when you tell people what they can't do. It, you know what I'm saying? As far as your capacity to serve the Lord, like, so you can't do this because you're this, or you can't do this because of that or that. Who can't show it to me? Can you show it to me in the Bible where it says that? If you can't show that to me, right?
Right.
Then we don't really have anything to talk about. And so, like I said, I encourage people to get outside of where we come from, right? My grandmother said, my father said, my mother said, well, I mean, none of those people's names was Jesus. So how they grew up, what was going on at that time, doesn't even have anything to do with me and my relationship. And like I said, I always say, do not go into spaces that are designed to beat you down or destroy you, because you're not gonna find healing there. So that's the first step, you know.
And that is taken away from the ministry of the church. Is when we open the doors of a church, we are saying all is welcome here, come. Those that are brokenhearted, those that heavy laden, come and meet the Father here. But you're really not opening the doors to everyone if your agenda is to leave a certain sector of people out. You know, like you just described, I think about me getting to know Christ myself. I have that relationship with him, and not just listen to mama, daddy, or the pastor, to cultivate a relationship with him. And as I cultivated that relationship with him, I began to realize that I am wonderfully and beautifully made, and he knew me before my mother and father even conceived me. Before they even did the deed, he already knew me. He knew my spirit. My spirit was with him. He created the spirit, and the body is just a vessel for that spirit to reside in. And I look at it as this vessel has proclivities and stuff. It has its the things that we have to fight against sometimes. Uh, but for me, it's to bring it up under subjectivity to the Holy Spirit, where I submit myself to the Lord. And like you said, uh, I'm not going to lie so that I can serve in a certain space. I'm going to find a space that is going to be welcome me and be able where I can get healed, where I can feel I'm a part of. I'll be part of the community. But it starts with you desiring a relationship with Him first.
Right.
And as your relationship develop with Him, you begin to find out it's not about this vessel per se. It's about your spirit and what you're putting in to that spirit. And we're talking about feeding your spirit. Let's talk about our LGBTQ plus youth and what they are facing today. And I'm concerned in certain areas, and that areas are their mental health. In a way, I'm encouraged, and in a way, I'm discouraged. The way I'm encouraged is I see that we are evolving, and I say evolving. Our society has been a little bit more accepted in certain places. And I'm discouraged, and I see other places that haven't changed, and like that's the church. I don't know if you got a chance to attend Fayetteville Pride that was here recently. There in the Coliseum.
Yeah, I did not.
Well, I saw a lot of youth that was identifying with other religions other than Christianity. And I found that a little sad because they find themselves being accepted in those areas versus being accepted into Christianity. And that's my biggest concern is for their mental health. And when we look at the statistics of our homeless, we see that the LGBTQ plus youth is high on the spectrum. It's up there. What do you suggest with the LGBTQ plus community? What can we do that can help our youth, our LGBTQ plus youth, mental and physical?
First I would say that I personally don't think that they find comfort and solace in other religious or faith-based religions, right? Unless those religions are affirming, right? Because it is historical. It is right now that most religious beliefs say that this is a sin of however they say it, right? So it's a sin or whatever, right? So and I think that Christianity stands out more is because the people who are currently running the country in which we live are using that as a way to demean, dehumanize, and abuse those of the community, right? Especially our LGBTQI plus youth, right? So my thing is what we already are doing, we need to do on a higher and different scale. So we need to continue to create safe spaces for those youth. Those of us who are older need to continue to be an example of surviving, not only surviving but thriving. Because I mean, for so long it's about I'm still here, but I mean, who wants to still be here? I mean, if all I'm gonna do is struggle, right? And we need to create spaces where they feel safe and they feel heard. The outdated ways of reaching out to not only youth but people in general needs to change, because as times change, the way that you connect with people changes, right?
Correct.
We are in a time of technology. Kids spend more time like this, right,
Right.
than they do connecting with people, and so we need to figure out how to combine technology and human connection and and bridge them together. That bridges the gap. As far as mental health goes, we need, like, gone are the days where there were um, vacation Bible school. I remember my whole teenage life. Every summer, I was excited to go to vacation Bible school because not only did I get to see the kids that I went to school with, I got to see kids from all over the city that I didn't know, that I wouldn't know if we didn't have those avenues, right? And trips and things geared to what the youth are into, so that they know that they're safe, that they know that along with this life there is something else, right?
Right.
And so that would be my thing. You have to, just how we say, we have to meet people where they are. We have to meet the youth where they are. And so I think we need more youth leaders, people who are passionate about creating those spaces and can speak the language of the youth in order to not only speak to but show, the goodness of the Lord and what that looks like in
Right.
real time.
Right. So we need to create spaces not only where they feel safe, but where they can flourish.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So uh, we do need more mentors, youth mentors. Um, I work in technology, and so I see, where technology is a big thing with the youth. This is, like you said, it is constantly here. So I'm still trying to figure out a way that I can bridge that together with being social. I do a program, a mentor program with our youth, with our high school students in the county where I work at. And I see a big difference in a child or a young person when you are there for them and you're giving of yourself, and they're so open and receiving of that. And I know our LGBTQ plus community is same way. We know we have like little groups and stuff now, but how many of them feel safe? That's the question. And the area that our church is wanting to work towards, to have a safe space for them.
That's a thing that I often have conversation about, right? So I think that the whole model of how we do things needs to be different. So like talking about Fayetteville Pride, I'm a part of their Facebook group, right? And I often see churches post things, but they post those things about come worship with us, or they don't interact with the people that are in the groups, except for when they posting about an event they having, or a recording of their past service, right?
Right.
And so that is not going to work, because just because you say I should come here, or just because you put up your service, first of all, nothing has come before that to make me feel connected to what you're talking about.
Right.
Right? And as we just said, youth people, period, need to feel connected to something. So if we never connect about anything other than, you should come here and here's our Sunday service. Then you're missing out on a whole demographic of people who don't see the personhood, right? So since I can't personally connect with who you are or what y'all talking about, then I'm just gonna skip over that. And I think that that's an issue.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. I think that's an issue when we talk about connecting with people, right? And so I think that is one of the things, especially that needs to be different if you expect for people to connect with even having a conversation about this is a place of healing, this is where you can come, this is where you will flourish at. Because if I'm not, nobody gets connected to a vision until they could get connected to a part of that vision, and nobody gets connected to a part of that vision unless they get connected to a person that is connected to said vision, right? So I tell people all the time, it's like when I say that I'm a minister, people are like, you're a minister? Yes, but people connect with me in a regular Joe way because I'm a regular Joe guy, right? And so then they want to figure out, but there's something very different about me, right?
Right.
And so then they want to know, why is there something very different about me? And then that's where the discussion starts, and that's where the connection starts, because they can see themselves in who I am, and I can connect with them on that personal level, and then we go to the next level of discussions, right? But if we can never connect, then you talking about, because in this day and age where people are continuously trying to use Christ as a reason to why you don't have access to God or anything else, or why you are unworthy to even, there are some people that say right now, I'm unworthy to be alive, right? Because of how I identify.
Right.
So if all of these things are saying that I am unworthy, and you saying you are, well, why am I? Because I mean, I don't see the benefit in that. I don't see where that has helped you in any type of way. Like, they taking away my rights every day. And so because I can't connect to anything but struggle, who wants to connect to that?
Right.
Right? Although there is struggle, but there is some happiness, there's some joy on the side of that. But if I don't never see it, especially if I'm 18, 19, 20 years old, I'm at the prime of my life. Why? I don't want to be connected to that, right? You telling me about all these things that I cannot and should not be doing, and I'm 18, 19, 20, 21. I know at 18, 19, 20 years old, I didn't want to hear that. So,
I think at that age, well, I can't say about everybody. For me, I've grown up different, and I say different is, from the time I was born to a certain time, you're told what to do and how to do it. And that's even down to how you fold your clothes, right? Or even what you could eat and what you couldn't eat. That's the type of background I came from. And when I had children, I realized that I did not want to pass that to them. And I say that as meaning, in some aspects that then I didn't know it would be trauma, or I had issues with it until I started thinking on that. Because for me, I like to take things and put it in compartments and then take it out later and look at it and examine it. And it took me a long time to take that out, unpacking it and then examine it. But when I was, I think, 21 is when, my mother then found out, and got kicked out of the house. And my father said, I love you, you can stay. But my mom said, no, you can't live
Gotta
like
go.
that and stay here. Now, you can stay here if you do what I tell you to do.
But you can't stay
Right, you can't stay and
and do what you want to do.
it, right, so, and that was the thing I told my father, I said, if I stay here, then I would have to conform to what she wants me to conform to. And I think about what you just said about certain peoples and certain organizations in our society will tell our people that they are not worthy, they're not good enough. You keep continue telling what they can and can't do. I'm asking myself this question: how do I be that connection for them, where that they can see that there is victory, where there is that you can find courage and be brave and be yourself in a world that does not accept you for who you are. That
Um, I think that like I said, part of that is just being I mean just being authentic, right?
Right.
So I'm authentically myself. I connect in different groups, right, with other people, you know, like comment on stuff or post questions that like are, you know, everyday average Joe questions that people be like, oh, and then they'll respond and then you'll respond with them and you know what I'm saying? Those kind of things start to happen. Like it's like building a bridge. Like you got all the parts, you just need to start putting them together. You know, show up for events, you know, like that stuff they do downtown. What's it called? Fourth Friday or whatever it is, and you know,
Fourth or Fifth Friday,
yeah,
or
whatever
it
it's
is,
called.
yeah.
You know, and not just be the person that's handing out the flyer to come to your thing, but
Right.
also be talking about, hey, how's your day today? How you doing? You was about to walk past. Hey, I like those shoes. I like that shirt. Spark conversation, like regular, everyday conversation. Because we live in a world where, like I said, there's always somebody telling you who you cannot be, who's unworthy and who is worthy, who deserves and who doesn't deserve. And at a time where there's always somebody doing this, like you don't want to be a part of that noise,
Right,
right? And so I think that's where it starts at. Community engagement is where it starts at, like authentic, genuine community engagement. You know, because
Yeah.
a kid can't even find a safe space if they don't know a safe space exists, and they won't find that if you speaking at them and not to them.
Um, and you start being that bridge. I was thinking in our culture, our elders are a bridge that takes us to our future, but it's also the bridge that connected us to our past. And
Absolutely.
so my mind's thinking, hey, if I'm going to be this bridge, be transparent, be me, and let them see the struggle, but also not just the struggle, but see the success that comes with being persevering and coming, being able to withstand and continue forward. Knowing that it's not always going to be good,
Absolutely.
and it's not always going to be bad. You're going to have some good, some bad, some ugly. It's like that Clint Eastwood movie, The
Yes,
Good, the
indeed.
Bad, and the Ugly, right?
I love that movie.
Yes, I love it too. So we just need to get out and meet people and not worry about the four walls.
Yeah, like church is wherever I am. You know what I mean?
Right.
If the Lord is wherever I am, then you know. So the four walls is like I don't think it is was ever meant for that, right? I think it was meant as a place for like-minded people to commune, tap in, get replenished, and go back out and you know talk about the good news. I think that we have gotten so conditioned to be in a structure that we missing out on the purpose, right? The job at hand. And so like I just I also think that it's saying that about the bridge part and like when you connect a lot of times us older cats be like, well, I don't really got nothing to, because from where I come from, it's a certain way, and now these kids today is completely different. I think that we as the older generation also need to tap into not only being ourselves, but being in a place of understanding of ourselves and where we came from, and understanding that everything that was is not necessarily not useful in what is to be, right? Because everything came from a foundation of something, right? Because what do they say? Teach a child in the way that which they should go, and they'll never depart from it. So there is a foundation that was built from my youth that continues to connect me, right? And so those parts, the for me growing up, my father was a really hard dude, right? So he was that you do as I say, period. Well, how you feel or what you think is not important here. How I feel and think, that's what we're doing. And so through having children, especially our youngest, right? I had to learn through my interactions with her that those certain parts of those things is not gonna work here. They didn't really work with me, but it was what I was taught. That was what I was taught, right? And so I have to learn how to take out what does not serve me, right? And then take those parts that help that foundation be built, right? And move forward with those things.
Check out the good and do away with the bad.
Right, leave the bad alone. Just leave that in the back.
I found that Lord Solomon said that there's nothing new up under the sun. It's the truth. It's just did in a different way, said in a different language, right?
Absolutely.
It's the same, but yet different. And I look at bell bottoms. You remember those bell bottom pants and
in
stuff?
the 70s.
Yes, in the 70s. Now they're called white leg jeans.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing, but a different language, right?
Right.
So, I got one more question, then we'll turn it over to the audience and see if they have a question. But if you could speak to every church leader in the world today, right now, what would you say to the church leaders?
Do better. And be it, do better.
And when you say do better at
Do better at creating, do better at leading, do better at listening, do better at doing, do better in commitment, do better in sacrifice, do better just period. Just do better.
Do better. All right. I take heed to that. We try to do better. At this time, we're gonna ask the audience if they have any questions for Winston. Any questions from y'all? No questions? Y'all got a comment or something you want to say? Go ahead.
Well, I think that, well, where I'm from, this is what they did for school. They had some kids that had problem with learning. So what they did is start an organization where they taught their parents. So as they were teaching their parents, they were teaching the kids, and they can come together and they can learn all together, and then help. So the same thing with religion, I would say. Teaching parents a different way how religion works can also help the kids.
Yeah, but but what in times where the parent is unable or unwilling, the question, right?
Well, you're always gonna have that.
Yeah.
You can't do anything about that.
But you mentioned safe spaces, and so that's the thing, is that the same way that we consider that idea is that, I think we live in a time where we're so quick if someone, is starting from a place that they don't understand, or they have been taught that their whole lives, or those sort of things, that we don't extend grace. We would rather cut them off, not hear anything else that they have to say. But in reality, if I provide a safe space for you to say, this is what I've been taught, this is how I feel, this is what I think, and I hear you out, and instead of arguing, but I then begin to open a door for you where you can at least see the world a little differently. Because I think really and truly, even for those parents who respond angrily to their children, who come out to them and those sorts of things, even in their anger, oftentimes that comes from a place of love, because they have been taught their whole lives that this will lead to destruction for their children. And so I love you so much, I don't want to see you go down a road of destruction, but I also don't know how to come at that from a place other than anger, right? So that idea of starting with parents, providing them a safe space, for them to ask the most, what they, what you might think is the most ridiculous question, or the most ignorant question, or whatever, where they can just be open and honest. And now for them to be able to hear that there is safety, that their children being their authentic selves can be a blessing to them, and not a detriment. So I definitely agree with that. I start too.
Understanding, showing mercy, showing grace, showing love, all the things that Jesus was trying to teach us, right? Yes.
From a religious standpoint, when it comes to leadership, I'll even add that to what Luke was saying, creating a space like that for pastors and leaders in the church to unlearn the things that they themselves were also taught coming up in the ministry. This is what the Bible says, or this is how we were taught to interpret what the Bible said, with condemnation versus love, right? You cannot, how can you love a brother? You can't love him because he has sin. Push him away, do away, right? But then here comes Christ, and he's like, no, love everybody. And then you're like, how do we balance what Christ is saying to you now? I come to fulfill the law. So everything that you were taught then was for a time period, for a reason. And you also have to teach the leaders how to put things into context. What happened in Leviticus was for a period of time. What happened, how David was for that time. They, with Saul, they wanted a king. I gave them that. They wanted this. I gave them that. That's for that time period. When you move forward, here we are today. It's not the same time period. They don't want the same thing. So how do you teach leaders how it's okay? When you step up there in front of the congregation, in front of the sheep I have trusted you with, it is to bring the message of love that I am now teaching you, the message of love that I died on the cross for, not the the message that needed you to sacrifice a lamb and do all this stuff. That's a different message. Yes, you're learning from it, but I'm not using this now for you to condemn. Creating a safe space for them also, because when we had our workshop in Florence, a lot of the ministers said even church hurt was things that they learned from their grandfathers and grandmothers in the church. This is how they were taught to preach. This is how they were taught to bring the message. message in its true authenticity that Christ is now telling you about. So even creating a space for ministers and leaders of the church to relearn the message of Christ truly from a foundation of love thy neighbor as thyself, and then build on that. Show grace that I've shown you. All those things would be also a good thing too, because then they're no longer just churches, not just affirming churches, but just churches that as they're supposed to be. We should
Amen.
get to that place where we don't even need to add affirming. It should just be as it should be. So that would be good too.
When you was talking, I was thinking about, I'm a technical person, so my mind goes to deprogramming. And how do you deprogram? You first got to look over the coding and then go and erase, delete that which was there so that you can write new. And if we could provide spaces, that, and have people willing to come that saying, hey, I know the first Bible was written was in Hebrew and Aramaic. So the translations that we have is just that, translations. I want to learn. I want to be open and available and understanding and grace and show grace and show mercy to people like Christ did. We first got to come to that place first of saying, I got some bad code here. This is not working. So what do I need to do? And getting to that place, or getting people to go to that place and wanting to change it.
Oh, another thing I was taught as a kid, you can be a good human and not be a Christian. There's some Christians that are not a good human beings. So that conflict right there alone makes everything.
That is true. I had one of my supervisors say to me one time, I'm a good person. I said, okay, you're a good person. He talked about all that he did. I said, okay, so that points that you're a good person. I said, but is Jesus Christ your Lord and Savior? Is he the one who died for you and died for your sins? I don't believe in religion. I said, I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about a Savior who came, who died where I couldn't, he could. That he took all that. And again, he says, I don't know nothing about no religion. I just know I'm a good person.
I have a question, because you guys have talked about the young people in the community. You mentioned homelessness and so forth. There are often times that I feel like we're talking about where we live, right? So Fayetteville, Cumberland County, surrounding areas. I often sit back and I look at our county, or where we live, as a closeted uncle. And I wonder if you guys ever get that feeling. There's certain, the LGBTQ plus community, HIV community, there are all these different communities, the homeless population, and it's almost like we know they're here, but we're just gonna pretend like they're not here. So it's like we're just gonna keep them in the closet. Do you guys ever get that feeling in our community, in our communities, I should say, because we're opening up Spring Lake, Hope Mills, everywhere. Do you ever get the feeling that for LGBTQ plus community, the HIV, the homeless population also includes the LGBTQ population? Do you ever get the feeling that we're just seen as a closeted uncle, and you're there, but we're just gonna kind of pretend you're not here? Do you get that feeling as you guys work within the community yourselves?
I do. As a matter of fact, my friend said to me last week that the first time he saw homeless, LGBTQ plus homeless, was a couple of weeks ago, and it opened his eyes. He never saw it before. It never dawned on him before. It was an aspect of our society that sometimes people's not thinking about, because as you get caught up in your life and your blessings and in the things that you have going on, that you miss that life's about other people too. And somehow, somewhere, he missed that, we have homeless LGBTQ plus people.
Now, this is not a knock on your
Yeah,
person
yeah,
you're
I
talking to.
understand.
When I hear them taking down the homeless tents and the homeless communities, it's obvious that they're aware that they're there.
Right.
That's the thing. I work with an organization, and when I mentioned the Pride event, they're like, "Oh, we don't go out and take part. If they wanted to, they can call us." And they're a huge organization in this community. And I was like, "Well, how would you not want to be present? I'm sure you have employees. You have all these people that come to you." So it's not, like, that's why I was mentioning, do you feel like they kind of ignore the population because it's obvious that these communities are here, but it's almost like, we're just gonna kind of see you but not see you kind of thing. That's what I was asking.
For me personally, in my personal opinion, I think that, because I have this conversation often, it's one of the bridges that my organization is trying to bridge. So for me, as a person of color, right, there's already a divide between people of color in the LGBT community here in this community and other people. Fayetteville Pride is very visible. They become more visible as the years have gone, right? And they're a great organization, but in our LGBTQI community here is not a diverse community, right? And so it is the reason why, if you go to Pride, that you'll see the difference, right? And so if a part of the community does not believe that they are a part of, then it is very easy to forget that they are, or not see them represented in a lot of things that happen here. Because let's be for real, like some of the challenges that I face as a black trans man, my trans siblings that are not black do not face those same situations. Now they can sympathize or empathize with what my struggle is, but they have no idea what that struggle is. And so if there is not a part of the community, just like with people who are unhoused, if you cannot connect with them, then versus just giving them a sandwich or whatever, you don't understand that plight. And so they become this invisible part of the community. And I feel like the black and brown part of the community here is that invisible uncle. And so I don't think that we tap into what those issues or concerns are, because one, they don't show up because they feel unheard. Or I should speak of eyes, because I speak of eyes, right? I don't show up because I feel unheard, right? And so if I'm unheard at the table, I like, I'll try to see if I can get at the table, but if I can't, I'm just gonna make my own, and then I'll connect my people that way, right? To tap in. But as a Christian, heaven is gonna look diverse,
like
right?
this.
You know what I'm saying? And so, the struggle is to connect to that so that everybody feels seen and heard.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that our church has started to work with the Pride Community organization here, is so that we can connect those tables, but that we can be visible, that we can be heard. But we had to start from somewhere. It goes back as showing that grace and mercy, get to know me, so that you can see and learn. One of the questions I asked a young man, do you eat lunch or dinner with anybody but your own race? And he says, no, that's all I've ever had dinner with is my own race. And I said, are you not yourself at a disadvantage, because then you've never had lunch or dinner with African American, with a white person, with a Asian, with someone of a different background than you, so that you can learn, so that you can grow. You will be surprised. I'm in a rural community. You'll be surprised that people who do not sit down at the table together.
I would
And
be
these,
surprised.
so that you can learn, so that you can grow and know about other cultures, and how to let them be heard and have a voice, and you listen. Um, so the step starts with us.
Absolutely,
Right.
and I think because, and it's not a dig on the South. I live here, but I'm not from here. So my experiences, my world experiences, tend to be different. And so in our community that we're speaking of, also the other thing that you have to keep in mind is that for trans people, right, especially now, it is safer to be unseen than to be seen. And so if you are at a level in your transition where you can be stealth, most trans people of masculine identity will be stealth, right? So that part of getting that demographic to feel safe enough to be in spaces to voice what the concern is another thing. Also, because we are in the South, you have more feminine presenting lesbians than you might see masculine presenting lesbians, right? And so it's easy for them to assimilate into society, right? And in the South, where you've been taught that to be same gender loving is a sin, right? So then you assimilate into community, and so then they don't show up for a lot of things, especially women of color, because again, I say the divide between people of color and other people is there's a very big divide in this community between the two, and being heard and seen, right?
Yeah.
So when you talk about creating spaces and community that way, you also have to think about those things that play into why these people show up and don't show up, and how can we get everybody to show up at the table. And inside of our community, trans people are often the afterthought, right? So, and which I find insane to me, seeing as at this current time and any time that you could point back to, trans people have been at the forefront of the fight for our equality, right? We look at Stonewall,
Right, tell the truth.
and things like that, and so we don't often get a place, especially trans men. We don't often get a space in which we get to speak about our concerns in the community in which we live. So, hope that answered the question.
Well, that's our intention, and that's one of the reasons I chose you. Because you're right. The most suppressed, the ones who are oppressed the most, are the ones who fight the hardest, so that everybody can have the freedom that other people intend to enjoy sometimes, right? I was listening to one of Martin Luther King's speeches, and it was called Blueprint. And he was talking about, don't be discouraged, or don't feel ashamed of your skin color or your sex that you were born, or different things like that, things that you can't change, right? and for you to be proud and knowing that God chose you and chose you to be in a certain group, in a certain place, in a certain time. And if I could pick what group that I would be born in, wouldn't it be nice, right? If we could pick, I would still pick Native American. And you know why I would pick Native American? Because even as everything they went through, of being oppressed, of being actually trying to be wiped totally out, they still stand, they still brave, and they still here saying, if anybody knows, I know, a language that was taken from you, that's not your native, that you had to grow up and then you couldn't speak your native language, or you had to go to schools that was deemed appropriate schools for you to go to. That is why it's important that we fight and fight hard for spaces that not only that we feel safe, but as Winston said, you feel heard and that you feel part of. I want us to make that connection so that people can feel heard, that they don't have to hide, that they have visibility. And if we don't create that, who's gonna create that? If we don't do it. I know I hear what we say we need, and one of the things they teach us in leadership is be what you don't see that you need. Like you know what you need, you don't see it in the leader that you have, so become that for the others.
Right.
So we have to become what we need to be for others.
Definitely. And consistent about it. Because Rome wasn't built in a day.
Oh,
And because there has been so much hurt and distrust, right? I often hear people say, well, you know, I've been doing this for a year or 6 months or whatever, and only 2 people showed up, and whatever.
Right.
Hey, that's 2 people that you helped, right? Or 2 people that you created a space for. So you just keep doing what you're doing, and people will start to gravitate towards that, or the people that you are supposed to be connected to, the people you're supposed to help, is who will show up. But it's easy to become discouraged in that, because you sometimes you get unfocused and you're like, well, they over here with like 10,000 people. I got like 2 people and they don't even come every week. You know what I'm saying? It don't even matter.
Right.
Because if we focus on the purpose, right, instead of who shows up and don't show up, then we on the right path.
Right. Well, Winston, I'd like to thank you for starting this journey with us. We appreciate it. And you'll always be Danny in my heart, man.
You can call me Danny.
We'd like to thank you for joining us today, and we say goodbye. And we hope that something that was said here would inspire you to say, hey, what can I do for my community? Who do I need to connect to? Or where do I need to be so that I can be that connection? Be blessed. May God bless you.